These are 5 minutes maximum, and we'll ask you to keep your comments to 5 minutes. The first one, and we have 3 of them this evening. The first one is Kevin Proteau on electric voting machines in Penticton. Mr. Proteau, would you like to come forward, please?
Good evening. My name is Kevin Proteau at 1484 Duncan Ave, Penticton. Yes, I'm here in regards to the electronic voting machines. This is something that I spoke up with the last elections in regard to these electronic voting machines and asking for a manual vote count to be done. And apparently I was supposed to contact Elections BC in regards to these voting machines, and which I thought I've discovered has nothing to do with Elections BC. But now I did have a brown bag lunch in here with yourself, Gary, in regards to these voting machines. And as you stated, and correct me if I'm wrong as well, there was some conflicts with the last elections in which the RCMP was.
That was not related to the voting machine, sir.
Oh, okay. Okay, my apologies then. But so what I've done is I've actually asked Vicky Lightfoot, who has been a scrutineer in elections, to come and speak, who could be a little bit more eloquent than myself in regards to these voting machines. So I'd like to allow Vicky.
Sir, I need to stop you right there. You're calling it a voting machine. It is not a voting machine. That's an American machine that I believe was used in Florida perhaps, and there was a lot of controversy about around the voting machine. This is not a voting machine where your vote is cast on a machine. This machine counts the ballots that are marked manually. Big difference. So this is a counting machine, not a voting machine that we use.
Okay.
So just to clarify what it is that you're about to say, so let's not make any allegations out there that are not accurate. It's a counting machine, not a voting machine.
So it's an electronic counting machine.
A counting machine where you put
electronic, right?
It's manually marked.
Yeah.
And as I said in my meeting with you, it's a machine that teachers use all the time for marking exams and so on. It's a common kind of electronic device where you put your manually marked
so right there,
sheet,
electronic, right?
put your manually marked sheet into a machine. The machine reads it and gives you the results. So just so we're clear what we're talking about.
Yes, we're talking about electronic counting machine.
Counting machine.
Electronic counting machine.
Marking counting. It reads a piece of paper that has been manually marked.
Yeah, I'm Vicky Lightfoot. I have a business at 221 Martin Street. Can you hear me okay? The machine is a counting machine. It's a ballot machine. And in a perfect world, all voting and counting would be 100% accurate without any bias or manipulation. However, election fraud is as old as voting itself. And scrutinizing the vote is and always has been a tool used to satisfy voters that elections results are true. According to Elections BC, the current booklet, the BC Organizer's Guide on page 29, scrutineers may challenge a ballot's acceptance or rejection during the ballot counting process. Objections to a ballot's acceptance or rejection must be raised while the ballot is being considered during the count. End of quote. With a mechanized process of counting the votes, the scrutineers have no power. Our checks and our cross-checks are lost. Nor are these counting machines infallible or tamper-proof. They require software, and there could also be a chip involved. And this, I'm not saying that this has happened here, but are we willing to put our democracy at risk with the possibility? Joseph Stalin is quoted as saying that the people who vote decide nothing. The people who count the votes decide everything. We have all heard the controversy surrounding the voting machines in the United States, and today many jurisdictions, through public pressure and court decisions, have gone back to manually counting the ballots. Florida, New Mexico, Washington, and Michigan State, to name a few. If voting machines or ballot machines are accepted blindly as status quo, we will risk losing our ability to determine our own futures. Democracy is eroded away one right at a time, and it is our right to fair elections. Who in this room is willing to give that up? Technology may offer efficiency, but it cannot come at the expense of truth and fairness. The manufacturers of these machines will tell you with glowing words how their technology will make the voting process more accurate, more streamlined, more secure, but all these things are not true. Security is the only guarantee that matters. Without people's confidence in that security, nothing is unimportant. The only confidence that matters is that of the voters. They must have trust in those administering our elections and the methods used to do so. In our Constitution is enshrined the right for citizens to observe the vote count at elections, but those put into place to keep the process fair will be unable to scrutinize the computer code used in these ballot machines, or any downloading that can be done, inserted prior to the election, to election day, during, if there's a chip involved in this, it can be tampered with during the day, and after voting. Such restrictions make our constitutional rights null and void. I have scrutinized at many elections. I've stayed from an hour to 3 hours at $10 an hour. The costs are, I calculated the cost to the city of manually counting the ballots would be between $1,500 and $2,000, depending on how many stay behind. As a candidate, will you feel secure in the knowledge that a machine is tabulating your results, downloaded somewhere you do not know where the software comes from? I think it comes from the United States, not a human being. With people, there are checks and balances. There are checks and counter checks to keep the process honest. With these machines, there is no such checks possible, except humanly counting every ballot before or after it goes into the machine, negating the mechanical process. It seems that public input in Penticton's change from manual counting to machine counting was made with minimal, if any, public input. I urge all of you tonight to pause and consider just what this change may have done or is doing to our democracy. And I heard you earlier, Councillor Robinson talk about the legislation. Well, our Constitution has ensured us that we can watch the ballot count. There is no possibility of watching a ballot being counted when the machine is done. I don't think there's too many people here that have the experience to recognize the computer code that can go into the machine, that can be altered from anywhere in the world while voting is happening. So I urge you tonight you have influence on this. I was told that it was a council decision to switch from ballot to manual. However, you forgot to consider the scrutineering a violation of my constitutional rights. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. For the council, Councillor Jacobite.
I have a few questions for staff and to you, the presenters. How do you perceive this tampering would take place if these machines aren't networked in? They're not plugged into any network other than the power.
They can be hacked and wirelessly. Professor at the University of Princeton demonstrated how that can be done. Is there a chip involved? Is there a chip in the machine?
They're in no way connected to our network, so they're just plugged into any electrical outlet.
You can be a wireless chip. Does this laptop need to be plugged in to send a signal, to change the codes and something?
Councillor Jacobite.
Once again, professors at the University of Princeton, that professor, and I've got the websites here, that links to the websites to show you, was able to access an unplugged ballot machine and change the count. What is a simple if statement, if anybody has any computer programming knowledge. It's a simple statement that, for example, Councillor Jacobite, when there'll be an if statement. If you reach 100 votes, subtract 20, give 20 to Councillor Licky. That's the simple if statement. So even if I were to check at the very count and everyone's at 0, it can be altered. So we need to have, and the very fact that you can't answer the question, is there a chip in there, sends my red flags up. You should know, you're the ones that are being elected, you should know these machines inside and out and counting the votes.
The other question maybe for staff to validate, just in purpose of a scrutineer, or one of the purposes of a scrutineer would be to validate the voters are actually registered. Is that one of their tasks?
Yes.
And staff? Yes.
Correct.
And the other one was, can staff also confirm, do we, after voting is done, do we actually count the total ballot? Because there's, I think last year we had 8,600 votes cast, at least for the mayor one. Do we do a cross-check to kind of to say that there was whatever, 8,600 votes counted, and we actually have 8,600 pieces of paper in the machine?
Through the chair, we do
Sometimes it's
cross-reference
so.
those, so we know exactly how many ballots we give out, we know exactly how many ballots we have in our vault, and we know exactly how many are voted on.
You gotta remember too, a code can be altered. I'm not too sure, can you answer my question? Where are the machines coming from? The United States somewhere? Because the last election that died there
The machines are actually in our vault.
right now.
Yeah.
And where does the software come from?
It's just a card that just has the names on it so that it can count each mark for
And they're
each
in the
name.
vault right now.
Yes,
What's the company name that's used?
it's ESS.
And they were formerly Diabol's machine. And,
Correct, I think the video that you're referring to is a voting machine.
yes, it is, but it doesn't matter, it could be anything. ESNS is, the owner of that is the brother of the owner of Diabol, who is actually in prison right now.
Just that should raise enough awareness there. So even if you do, you can still cross-reference the 8,600, the fact that 8,600 people voted, and you could say that there's 8,600 pieces of paper in there. You can't confirm, you're not counting the actual votes themselves. So there is no manual vote count done at the end. You're relying strictly on the counting of the machine. Correct?
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to the delegation. So if I'm following this correctly, let's just say we're doing it manually. What's to stop a person from arbitrarily saying, I'm not going to count that one? Like, why is that any more or less infallible than an electronic system?
When you're counting the votes, you have an official overseeing it. So if I were a scrutineer and I challenged a vote, the final say goes to the election official. And it's just reported that there was a scrupulous looking ballot. I've scrutineered at many, and that has never happened. And of course that happens, but it's reported, it's put in the records, and it's overseen by an official body person.
Okay, my second question is to staff then. It's been my understanding that if there is a question at all on the ballots, that the head election officer has the ability to go in and manually count the votes and look at, along with the scrutineers, every single marked ballot. That's my understanding. Is that not correct?
Through the chair, there is, yeah, I think you're referring to a judicial recount, and yes, we can do that.
Okay, so, but that's.
Okay, but
So if I could just finish, please.
Okay,
So then there are checks and balances in the system already, whether they're manually done or electronically done, to safeguard that.
For the last elections, I did ask for the manual vote count, and I was denied and told to go to Elections BC because City Council had voted and made it a mandate. So that's what I was told. And we can look through the transcripts from last year.
Sorry, I need some clarification on that. You said you asked for it to be
I asked
after
for,
the fact or before?
after right after the elections, our first council meeting, I had asked for a manual vote count. And I was told that I had asked how long this had been in place. I was told it's been 3 terms because I've only been living here for just under the 1. So I was able only to participate in the last elections. And so, and then I asked as well, I was told they were here for 3 terms. And then I asked if this was, when the council passed this bylaw for this, did they ask the people? And that hasn't been done. But, and then so I asked for a manual vote count, and I was told that I have to go see Elections BC, and Elections BC has nothing to do with the electronic counting machines or voting machines here.
So you're referring to the last municipal election, not the by-election, but the,
Yeah.
Ms. Schmidt was not here at that time.
from everybody, you still haven't answered my question though. How do I scrutineer a machine counting? How can I scrutineer those votes going through being counted by a machine? It doesn't matter that there's checks or balances with the manual count. I'm asking for a check and balance where I can observe the machine counting the balance, and I can't. That's the question. And I don't know, but the provincial and federal elections haven't gone to voting machines because of that question. And so I don't know how Penticton, without a public process, without public input, decided to ignore that fact that there's no way to scrutineer the count. Maybe the machine isn't valuable, but maybe it's not. I have to be 100% certain that it is, and the only way I can is if I can eyeball and watch. And that's been since the time of voting that has been there. So somewhere along the line, the city of Penticton decided to ignore that part of voting. And I'm asking you tonight to reconsider that. And even from a judicial point of view.
Councillor Jackman, Councillor Collins.
Just curious if you'd be satisfied if we did a test of 100 ballots random and
No.
ran that through and
No, because the software, the codes, everything, if there's a chip in there, you haven't answered that question, we don't know, and I would, the computer programmer could be involved. But it could be after 200 votes, do a count, if this candidate is at 120, let's take away 20, get into this candidate. So the number of votes that we count still balances with the number of people who voted, but there could be a manipulation. To me, I've looked at this very closely, and Kevin wanted me to come tonight with a number of options for you, but to me, given the legality of the question and everything, the only option is that you allow somehow for a scrutineer assigned by a candidate to watch the ballots being counted.
So back to a manual ballot.
That,
That's
to me,
good.
that is the only way to secure scrutineers can do their job. It's written in the BC Elections BC. So the Elections BC guide that just came out assumed that there would be scrutineers observing the count. There's nothing in there about machine counts. I looked at machine scrutineer. So I might be assigned by a candidate to be there for the count, but I can't because the machine's already counted.
Thank you, Ms. Schmidt.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think what they're assuming with the scrutineers can watch the count. You can watch us test the machine. You can watch us run the tapes. That is how we count the ballots here.
Shall I read it again? From Elections BC. Scrutineers may challenge a ballot's acceptance or rejection during the ballot counting process. Objections or rejections may be raised while the ballot is being considered during the count. I can't observe a machine counting each ballot.
Councillor Robinson.
Through to.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot Councillor Collins.
No, you're-
So I was just had a question for staff. How many cities in the province now are using these machines, and is Penticton the only one, and is it allowed provincially for us to use this?
Through the chair, it's absolutely allowed. I couldn't give you a guess on how many communities are using them. I think most of the ones in the Okanagan are. Lake Country, Kelowna, Peachland, I believe.
Is Summerland?
I'm not aware. And most big cities, I believe.
Again, I don't see the relevance of that. Sorry, the point is it doesn't matter if everybody's doing it. You have a citizen bringing up a concern. And unless you can tell me how I can properly scrutinize every ballot, that's the problem that you have to address.
Councillor Robinson.
I think I understand this, but I mean, in this day and age, almost everything is done electronically. We make our check deposits by, on your iPhone these days. Almost everything is done electronically. I suppose there's no system in the world that's fail-proof.
And I've had my debit cards and credit cards compromised.
Excuse me, this is not a debate. We go into banks on a daily basis, and they use counting machines to count our money at the bank too, but they're usually pretty correct. So, I mean, until somebody comes up with a system that absolutely couldn't fail, I'm afraid you kind of lost me on that one. But that's just my personal opinion, and of course you're entitled to yours as well. I wasn't here when the decision was made, but I'm quite happy with it. So I guess that's all I have to say on it.
So I think where we are, we've heard your concerns. There's a number of questions now that are being formulated, I think, in everybody's head around this table. We need to refer this back to staff and take the concerns under consideration and see if there's a way that we can address them, because I hear what you're saying.
Okay, so when are we, because the elections are coming up here, so we need something to be decided here today, like when are we meeting on this again? Or one of the other compromises we can have here is you can use your electronic vote counting machine here, but as well to have volunteers to count the paper ballots after. It's the only way we can compromise here.
So we will, Ms. Schmidt is our chief election officer, so we'll refer this question to her, and hopefully she'll be able to come up with an answer that will satisfy this council.
So when can I expect that?
That would be it. We'd have to decide that by the next meeting for sure.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
All right, on to the next delegation. We have Mr. Ken Johnson on the speed enforcement.